From a colonial position, it's just a lot of whole mechanistic things, like no particular unique extension that comes from these guys. So what it tells us is first that the EU is too sophisticated, that we have these two countries who are sophisticated and we have to interact with them. I don't see how the sophistication of countries is a good reason for us not to interact with them. We think first, that is not, if that is a valid argument, then African countries should never be part of the UN because we are dealing with a great number of sophisticated countries. I think also the same way, Britain also is also sophisticated. So we don't think that saying that countries are sophisticated is a sound argument for you not to interact with those countries. That is a very, very weak argument. Then he then says that he then talks about the second thing he tries to talk about to make it unique is about Africa's positionality. But Kumi already analyzed Africa's positionality in today's debate and talked to you how it is very crucial that as Africa we deal with the EU, because when we deal with Britain alone, then Britain can pull out of contracts from agreements at any point in time. So the fact that we deal with a greater number of people means that there's a particular bureaucracy in terms of it, means that you can lobby, means that you can have countries that are sympathetic to you. So Africa's positionality is an argument that comes for us. There's no unique analysis that makes the argument to be credited for them in this particular debate. Then he then talks about how one-on-one interactions are important because we will have bargaining power. We think very crucially that the bargaining power is something that we have better on our side of the house, because when you are dealing with a particular country, you don't have any bargaining power because the country can decide to leave that agreement abruptly. But when you deal with a collective number of people, you think you have more bargaining power because you can lobby, because you can have people who are sympathetic to you. So that argument is one that doesn't make sense. Like we don't get anything uniquely different, like from what Fisio says. Like this is the extent to which analyze. I don't think they're in today's debate. Then the ones who are miserable but still sound more sensible on the bench come to tell us firstly that Brexit is something that is ideal. Now this is why our rebuttal is important. They say the argument is that Brexit is ideological, that it is just about you trying to oppose the establishment, the Brussels establishment. That is the argument. We say first that this is not necessarily about you wanting to oppose that establishment. First, we say if it's about you wanting to oppose that establishment, then it might be good. But to the extent where the motive of you opposing the establishment is based on ultra nationalist and racist like a motive, then we think it is even more problematic. Now, assuming we are talking about Donald Trump here, because it is the same ultra nationalism that brought Donald Trump to power. We will be saying no, Donald Trump ultra nationalism is bad. Donald Trump's populism is bad. But with Brexit, it is good for you to be ultra nationalist. It's good for you to be racist. We don't think that is an argument that makes sense in today's debate. Then he says there is no homogeneity in the EU, to which can be sufficiently rebutted by telling you how the EU has a particular. You can't say that a particular union does not have homogeneity when countries that trade within a particular union have a single currency. Like the argument is analogous because they have a single currency. He doesn't give us any instances when the EU has failed to achieve particular policies because of the differences that exist within them. But we are giving examples, and that is the clash. We are giving examples about how the EU can harmonize. Now, that argument is going to be valid if we're talking about the argument about the heterogeneity. Is going to be valid if we're talking about one African country dealing with numerous countries. But that is why the EU exists. The EU exists intrinsically to harmonize all these countries and make them to speak in one voice. To the extent where you're still saying that even with the EU existing to harmonize them, that there's a heterogeneity, then you're undermining the fact that the EU exists to harmonize those countries the same way. Can you say the same about the AU? The AU is just like the AU keeps short. The AU is just like the EU. But you can see that there's a great deal of harmony in the EU, and there's even more harmony in the EU than in the AU because we even have those guys even have one currency. So to the extent where all this the EU is one of the best examples of a particular union that can have harmony. Like if you want to analyze it by any to any extent, then he brings the argument which says. When he says, he talks about how Commonwealth countries will trade with us if we abandon Britain. Now, we say this is the lie first because, like Kumi tells you, countries like Australia will still be that with you. Countries don't look at all these very arbitrary things. They look at how they benefit from you. When countries want to enter into agreement with you, they think of how can we benefit. So if Australia thinks that they're going to, or Singapore thinks that they're going to benefit with dealing with Nigeria, we then say, because they are not friends with Britain, we can't deal with them even when they are benefits. We think the only metric which countries use is about benefits. Then we think that this debate, this is very important. This debate is not about entirely abandoning Britain. It is one that says that when there is a trade-off, when you have to make a choice between either dealing with Britain or dealing with the EU, we should choose the EU. But we can interact with Britain on different terms. But to the extent where there's a particular trade-off, to the extent where we have to make we have to prioritize, then we say we must pick the EU. But assuming this trade-off doesn't exist, then you can interact with Britain on different terms. But when the motion says we will prioritize this, and that means when there's a trade-off, when we have to make when we have to choose between these two, we have to pick the one that's more favorable to us. That doesn't necessarily mean that we are entirely abandoning Britain. Even if that is the comparative, even if we are entirely abandoning Britain, then we don't have any problem with that anyway. Then he says that America and Britain have a very unfortunate relationship, and how it is something that in America, because of America's position, keep quiet, because of America's positionality in the world today, Africa needs America. We think first, that very crucially, that Donald Trump's America is not the same America that embraces the whole world. Donald Trump's America is an America for Americans. So you can't see this talk about America as being that country who that country that wants to embrace the whole world in that particular regard. We think very crucially that since Donald Trump policies are more internal now, we don't even in America. It is high time we really demystify the fact that America is a savior that has to fertilize us every time and has to be our savior in that particular regard. We don't get any analysis from these guys. We think very crucially, apart from the fact that Columbia has analyzed to do about the unreliability of Britain and how bureaucracy counts positively, we think that very crucially that the EU comparatively yields more power and it has a larger reach and can affect policies within that particular region. The comparative is that with Britain whose exist from the EU does not make them immune to policies. Britain has left EU, but that doesn't mean that they can't be affected by policies that are made within the EU. What that means very importantly is that Britain will be affected by policies that are made by the EU, but doesn't have the bargaining power to engage with those particular principles that bind them. So the EU will still be affected, and Britain will still be affected by deals that the EU makes, but they can't negotiate. They don't have bargaining power to change those particular precepts and those particular deals. We think that it's very crucial. Finally, we tell you about how the Commonwealth must change their outlook. We for long that been viewed as an entity that bottles Britain and just exists to serve their own interests. We think we must make a strong statement to say we do not need Britain for any commonality, that we make business and we want to take the policy that brings us the best outcomes. Very, very proud. How